have you recorded. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, okay. Then, okay. I am part of a European project called Co-Design Citizen Observatory Services for the European Open Science Cloud. And essentially, my research nowadays focus on knowledge management and citizen observatories, governance, and a little bit of mix of that related to sustainability.
We had
Then,
Jaume Piera saying, giving a speech also, so it's you know him, right?
Jaume Piera. Yes, great. Jaume Piera is the coordinator of the research group that I am part of and the coordinator of the project of Code for Cloud. Then we work together, and now I want just to share with you like a three important experience related to the Iberoamerican Participatory Science Network. As Jaume and myself, both we are part of the management group of the network. We have been working on that almost for 4 years. And we would like to share with you our progress, our lessons learned, and some of the seeds that we are trying to promote across the region related to networks and citizen and participatory science. Apart from that, I would like to share with you the governance roadmap. And finally, if we have time, maybe we can try to do a little exercise using the governance roadmap. Then let's start. I will use this. Yes, please allow me to put this in a presentation mode. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Then, what I will try to share with you more than what are we doing is how we finally reach this point to confirm the Iberoamerican Participatory Science Network. Essentially, we are a group of people trying to connect organizations, initiatives, and projects within the region of Iberoamerica, especially Latin America, and create a space for exchange knowledge, practices, and start to connect a lot of experience that has been in the region for many years, maybe known as another names, you know, as an action research, participatory action research, and other kind of terms. But nowadays to try to identify as a community, and with a lot of challenges that I have, that we need to overcome, but with a lot of progress too. Then, how did we start? This was in 2017, essentially like the main point when we met together in a biodiversity monitoring participatory course in Colombia, and we were people from almost 6 countries from Latin America, Peru, Mexico, Argentina, Colombia, Bolivia. And we were thinking the importance of starting to work together for trying to exchange our lesson learned in terms of using technologies, in terms of monitoring biodiversity, in terms of how to, especially the experience that we have working with community can help to the sustainability and to the challenges that we have in terms of environmental justice in the region. Then with all of this that you can see here, some of the photos that we have trying to identify here in the left, there is a tool called in Spanish, enredómetro, that is like a kind of thread, trying to identify what were we working, what we were doing, if we have some interest to connect together. And of course, we found a lot of points of connections to try to help us. After this meeting, we decided to start formally the process to dream with a network. How did we start to do that? Essentially, that day we said, okay, we have common motivations. We know that it's important to exchange lessons learned within the region. Then with this common motivation of creating a network, we decided creating working groups. We said, okay, let's go to see how together we can move forward with this dream. And for that, we create 4 working groups. And these working groups, essentially, we're trying to do at the beginning is co-create the essential questions that we need to answer to really consolidate a network, or to step by step thinking how to work together. And the final point, I will walk through some of these steps later on. It was analyze the existing experiences, because most of us, we were in contact with the European Citizen Science Association, with the Citizen Science Association in United States, with the Australian Citizen Science Association, and we have been following the work of these networks for a while. And then we knew that there was a lot of progress on that field, and we would like to learn from them how they have been working, how they took decisions, what kind of structure they were having for really moving forward, how to solve the topics of financial support, you know, all this practical matter that you have when you decide to work together. Then this was one of the main breakpoints for us, and it was during the Citizen Science Conference in United States 2 years ago, where we decided to organize a workshop for learning about the governance, about the communication strategy, about the engagement strategy from the different networks. Here you can see people from Dorte, that it was with you during the course, people from ECSA, people from AXA, Australian Citizen Science, people from the Citizen Science Association, where we were exchanging ideas. And they were very generous and very kind in terms of what they had been doing and what lessons learned they had related to the functioning of the network. With these insights, our groups continue working in essentially 4 of them: the governance working group, management working group, experiences mapping, and communications. I just mentioned this because essentially this was our pillars to really make this real. All of this is voluntary. All the activity that we do here is people like you or like me that is, you know, have the work in different kind of field. Most of us, we come from the biodiversity and environmental area. And we are trying to expand our view and our connections with people working on citizen science and other kind of fields like health, public health, astronomy. Fortunately, people from all these kind of areas are joining us, but the reality is most of us are coming from this field. And thanks to this dream, we organize in these 4 groups. Nowadays, the 3 groups that maintain the RICAP alive is the management group, where we essentially took strategic and practical decisions of the daily life of the network, the experiences mapping that I will share with you very fast, some of our main results of our STAR result of this mapping experiences of citizen science across the region. Because when was one of our first challenges, and this was asking is, are we really doing citizen science in the region? How have been the people working on that? What topics, how many experiences, what are we publishing? I will share with you the results of our poster, and the communications and engagement group that finally is the one that keeps alive the network in online channels. After almost 1.5 years of working together, asking to ourselves the essential question like, what is our purpose? Why are we doing this network? Why do we need to create a network and work together? How are you going to move forward? How do we take decisions and all of that? We decided to create a governance structure that nowadays is essentially mainly by working groups. We reached to a governance agreement that is a public document available in our webpage. We finally created a how to join us procedure, creating memberships and saying to the people how they can participate within the network. And the most important point is we create communication channels where we are trying to grow the community nowadays through the webpage and the forum. Then, just to summarize a little bit, what is our purpose as a network? And we essentially, this is one of the very important discussions that we have in the network. And if you see, our purpose is quite ambitious in many ways. I will check some of the chat. If someone have questions or comments, I will happy to reply or expand something if you want to use the chat. Then this is one of our main discussions, and this took a lot of meetings for us, because, you know, we are coming from different fields and expectations and experiences, and we were saying, what is the purpose of doing citizen science or participatory science? If you see, we decide as a network not call, like most of the networks across the world, that is Citizen Science Association, we call participatory science. And this was part of our main discussion, to identify the progress in the region related to action participatory research and the bottom-up approach that we have in the region for many decades. And then nowadays is, we can say, mixing or taking advantage of the technologies and going to the other extreme of the citizen science that is more related to collected data and to that we call today contributory projects, where the people are collecting data through mobile phones. And in this, like a kind of a spectrum from the contributory projects and action research projects or collaborative projects, where the people are more active in all the steps of the research, we decide in the discussion how to visualize that. For us, it's very important to have all this spectrum. That's why we decide to use the participatory science as a term, understanding in our context that for us is kind of synonym of citizen science. But connected to that, it was, what are we looking for behind this network? And essentially, our main purpose nowadays is seeks for a recognition and integration of the participatory science as a valid source of knowledge and information for decision making. I remember very well one coming from one of our colleagues from the Citizen Science Association in USA, when they read this and they say, oh, this is a kind of ambitious purpose, because it's quite difficult nowadays that we are facing still this challenge that really citizen science data and information are considered valid in terms of many decision-making process. If I can talk from the region that I am coming from, and it's many official environmental information system managed by the public administration, they don't include the citizen science information as a valid source. Even in some cases, is a matter of conflict, especially, for instance, in air quality, that the people slowly are starting to create a citizens network for measuring quality, particular matter, and other variables to identify their problems in their localities. And for some of the public administration, this is becoming a problem. And instead of connecting, is seen in the like kind of encouraging of people with data to show that really there is a problem that the public administration are not addressing, is getting complex. And that's why we consider that as a network we want to work is to really strengthen this like a kind of ties, like connect public administration, researchers, academic, NGOs, and people working on that to use the science as a way to talk the same language, because at the end, all of us, we are working on the well-being of the humans and the planet. Then if we have this purpose behind, then we are using the citizen science as a way to reach that. This was at the end our like a big purpose, that what is moving the people behind this network, including me. How are we within that? Facilitating collaboration, exchanging knowledge, experiences, connecting people, trying to create the space. Maybe the COVID is not helping us so much this last year to do that, or maybe yes, it depends on how you want to see it. But this is our work nowadays, trying to promote these connections. In terms of the process, the main lessons learned, can I say, or the key aspect that we learned from the creation of the network in these like almost 3 or 4 years, it was first, identify internet skills. We, at the beginning, we were very doubtful about a step that like take the jump and say, okay, we are a network. We are a network. Even if we were people, almost 30 people from different countries, we were kind of doubtful of how this is going to work. Do we have enough skill to put and to move forward this network and all of that? And the interesting point was, yes, we decided to identify internal skills. Some people were passionate, more than knowledgeable, were passionate about governance. Other people were passionate about communication channel. And even if people, many researchers that they don't work really in social networks or wherever, they said, okay, I really want to move forward with this. And with this identify of internal skills, we start to work together, and essentially we learn to recognize and accept what I call, and sorry, maybe not the best term, but it's the network flow. Something that happens, especially with voluntary work, is sometimes we are very used to work on projects with deadlines and with certain kind of rhythm. But when you are working with volunteers and with, the time that you could steal from the rest of your activities, the networks have a kind of flow. Sometimes you have a lot of activity because the group of people are very engaged and have a lot of time to go move forward with your goals and create the governance structure and create events and webinars and so on. And later on you see like a kind of wave, and this is very important because if you are part of this kind of thing and you don't understand that really the networks, this kind of rhythm, has this kind of flow, you can feel a little bit sometimes a lack of motivation to move forward, or say, oh, the network is not moving forward now, no one is really doing anything. And this was part of our process. We were learning that we have a rhythm, that we need to understand that the people involved of that sometimes have a lot of intention, motivation, and time, sometimes not, while we can reach a point where essentially we have a official and financial support to work with people more dedicated to that, or exclusively dedicated to that. Still, we are a network essentially based on voluntary work. And the most important thing is open all kinds of communication channels. For that, one of our, I think, successful channel is the forum, where we are trying to expand our community. And nowadays, we are 13 countries involved in the network. We are 6 working groups. I put the mark because we're 6 nowadays, active 3. And because the working group are essentially a group of people that create a defined goal to deliver, almost 50 members on the region, and more than 100 people participating in the forum. So, and this is our kind of happy photo of all this process, when you see together. This is the Congress about protected areas that is organized each 10 years, and it was in Lima, Peru, and we were there as a recap, presenting the network and asking to the people what is the connection between citizen science, or the role of citizen science in the protection of environmental areas, national parks, and so on. And we were working together in a workshop, and this is kind of part of the activity that we had been doing. The last year, we have our virtual first general meeting, where almost 50 people across the region were, meeting each other online and asking and sharing their experiences and growing the community. And the interesting point that I wanted to share with you, it was the result about the citizen science from the Iberoamerican perspective. This poster is available in the link that you see down there. I just want to highlight some of the main results of this work that we did as part of the experiences mapping of the working group. As I mentioned before, one of our main goal at the beginning, it was identifying the community, but recognizing the path that we had in the region. And for that, the first activity that we did, it was how do we call citizen science in the region? What are the terms that we are using for that? Because we were doing essentially a systematic review in the first parts of the process. Then we create like a kind of list with all of our partners saying, okay, let's see. Citizen science, participatory science, amateur science, civic science, collaborative science, community science, indigenous science. O sea, we had a lot of terms for calling the same activity. And the most important point is many of these terms really didn't identify as a citizen science process. They don't say, no, I was not doing citizen science. You know,
It's
and
very
even participatory
interesting what
science.
you are saying, Karen, because we were also talking about this, and Basil was also pointing out that citizen science, it's not very easy to understand in their local context. So they should really look for the best concept that really involves and is understandable by the broadened group of people and actors.
Yeah, Andrea, indeed. Even citizen is a word that in some context create kind of resistance.
Exactly.
Especially if you go to rural areas, if you work with indigenous community, if you work with a certain kind of community, the word citizen is like, no. Even if we know that exists a standard definition, but it's not about that. It's the interpretation and the feeling that the people have with the language. And then for many people, citizen is a very specific term for the people in cities, like there, not us. Okay, then we have been like listing these terms, and with all these terms, we start to search what kind of information were available in the region related to experiences, documenting experiences in the region. It was quite a challenge. First, because we don't tend to publish so much at region in the mainstream databases. When I said mainstream databases, I had mentioned Scopus, Web of Science, or all these mainstream databases. In the region, you would tend to publish in another databases, or not to publish, or to keep in a gray publications. This is part of our, like a problem to try to visualize all the work that we had been doing. But in general terms, we found like more than 200,000 index publications that were related to experiences of citizen science in Iberoamerica. Most of these publications coming from Spain, Colombia, Mexico, Brazil, and Chile. And near 700 different citizen science experiences documented in other kind of sources that are not available in databases, even if we were consulting databases that were from the Latinamerican area, like Cielo and the Alnet, another kind that is very located, very regional located. Something that we knew already, and it was part of our community, that is that most of these citizen science experiences, I will move very fast right now, it was from the field of biodiversity. Most of our experience are very related to monitoring biodiversity, ecology and environment, natural resource management. And even if we know that there are a lot of experience in terms of social science like itself, still this is the main point. Just to go fast with this, our concluding remarks is essentially we need to collect more data for really understand what is happening in general terms in the region, analyze the different sources, and essentially build a conceptual framework that really can respond to the way or the epistemic that has been developed in the region for the participatory science and essentially for the participatory action research. I will skip this because we are quite out of time. As a result of all this process of the building, the governance of the RICAP, and at the same time, the Citizen Science Amazon network, because both of them, we were involved in this process, we decided to create the governance roadmap as like a kind of lessons learned on our seat to share with another citizen science network. this is essentially the path that we follow and the path that we want to continue following, because it doesn't mean that we went through all of this. Most of this it was addressed, and many of these parts we will want to address. What is the governance roadmap? It's essentially a guide. When you are sitting, you know, like a kind of group of people saying, we need to create a network, we need to work together, how do we start? And this is the first like kind of a step that we do. So it's okay, before moving forward, do anything, whatever we want to do, we need to define a purpose. What is moving all of us together? Once we define the purpose, we start to really say, okay, if we have this purpose together and we want to create a network, let's work in create the practical decision and the decision-making process. And indeed, in that, we create 6 areas for organizing our discussions with, because at the beginning, you know, everyone was bringing a lot of questions and saying, we need to talk about money, we need to talk about engagement, communication, methodology, and we say, wait. Let's organize these discussions. And this discussion we're organized in 6 topics. The first one was the organizational approach. How are we organized? Working groups, we are going to organize by countries, we are going to organize by topics, by stakeholders, and then citizens, researchers. How are we going to organize the network? This was the first part. The second part was the operational structure. Okay, how are we going to take decisions? Who takes decisions in the network? The working groups, the management group, the General Assembly, what kind of decision they are taking, who is deciding about the money of not, if there is not, all of these kind of decisions. The next area, it was communication. That is very important. And he said, how are you going to ensure a transversal and transparent communication within the network? What channels are we going to create? Who is going to administrate that? What language do we want to use? And we are working on that. The other very important area was the participation model. It means how the people could be involved. Everyone can vote. Everyone can take decisions about the network, who can join the network or no. Are going to be a membership paid or no? This was the last. The financial sustainability, and it's very important, is what is the strategy to make us alive? How can we get money for keeping alive the network? And the decision-making model. And it was essentially in which spaces we are going to take decisions. At the end, we, like at these 6 areas and all the questions that I was mentioned, we create different kind of options. That is a decision tree. And each option is supported by a set of questions to support the network. Once you respond to these questions, you can evaluate the option and reach agreements. For example, in this case, organizational approach, the decision trees have like a kind of suggestion. It doesn't mean that you need to follow one of them. For instance, there is 3 options here. You can take the option of geographic organization, organize your network by country, by region, by ecosystem, by stakeholders, as I mentioned before, citizens, researchers, academics, public agency, like a kind of helix, the 4 helix of participation, or thematic. And in some point we were discussing that. We want biodiversity of people working for different kind of areas. And once we define like a kind of path, we start to work in the questions that is supporting this. I don't know if we have time, Andrea, because I think that we are kind of running out of time, and I would like to know if someone has comment, questions, or anything until this point.
I think we can open for comments and any question that there is in the room, and you can show the exercise. Maybe you can do it later in your institution, and yeah, we won't have enough time to really take advantage of every step. But I think you have shared a huge amount of information and good tips, so maybe we can leave the floor for questions.
Okay, maybe I will ask one question. you had a rich experience in this, like in the whole process, in the partnership, I mean, in networking and so on. So did you ever happen just to meet such cases, for example, what I mean, that citizen scientists, I mean, community members or other people just were so deeply engaged in this process, then they decided to become real scientists. I mean, just to get this high level of competences and so on. Because
okay, this is a kind of let me see if I understood properly your question, but I am laughing because one of our weakness, I have to confess, of many of our citizen science association, including RICAP, is the real involvement of citizens. Yes, this is one of our first strong discussion in the network. Who are we? Who are we? We are researchers working on citizen science, or we are researchers that have been participating in that. Where are the citizens? Where are the people involved in this as part of the network? And in the rest of networks, when we are analyzing them, we found almost the same challenge. That in many of the discussion, we are just talking from ourselves. Nowadays, RICAP is working on that, trying to really invite and create the spaces for the citizens to participate and to engage and to have a voice and to shape the network. But the reality is quite challenging, because even if we don't want, we create like a kind of a specialized language, you know, in many ways that don't really open the spaces to all kind of participants. And this is something that we need to work as a community of citizen science. I don't know, Soriana, if this is replying maybe part of your question.
Yes, thank you. And one more question. Again, just did it ever happen that, for example, there were some contradictory between, like, you know, research approaches or the results of these research approaches? I mean, between community members, for example, and just university.
I know that there are a lot of experience like that, and especially if you see, I can say in the region, because most of these experiences and our work as a researchers are connected to environmental monitoring. And the reality is that, yes, conflicts in terms of, let me organize the response in 3 steps. One is, first, we still don't have the good practices in many ways to do community peer review. And it's in many ways, we don't validate the resource of our research with the community itself. And then the community later on say, or even they say they see the impact of our results as researchers, you know, wherever this is a monitoring on a species and so on. Many times we have to confess, and this was part of our discussion, is we do a kind of socialization, but not a validation with the community of the results of the research. That is different. I can't go and tell you, hey, I did this, but not consulting if you consider this viable, this valid, what impact is going to have this information in your daily life. This is a very interesting, for instance, point that in citizen science, Amazon network are working, because, for instance, they are monitoring the migration of the fish through the Amazon basin since the beginning to the end. And you know the impact that this could have in the fishermen, you know, because they are the ones saying what are they collecting. There are kind of restriction of what do you collect and what not. And there are a lot of challenges in terms of what information is sharing, what not, with whom, and what implications could have. Yeah.
I see. Thank you, Karen. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Karen. Does it make any sense to show the exercise that was coming next, and maybe they can do it on your own? I will stop.
This is